Hi everyone, Rob here and welcome back to Rob's Model Cars. Today you join me for another comparison video between these three Ferrari F40 sealed resin models in 1/18 scale. Now it's no secret to followers of the channel that the Ferrari F40 is my favourite supercar of all time, so I'm quite fortunate to have a lot of F40 models in my collection, and today we're going to compare these three. So we've got the Kyosho high-end sealed resin version, we've got the BBR high-end sealed resin version, and also the latest AB models high-end sealed resin version of the glorious Ferrari F40. Now from the outset, these three models all look very similar. They are all of very high quality. These are the highest quality models you can buy of the F40, but there are a few details on each of these models that set them apart from the other. Now we will break it down and go through all the details, starting with the overall body proportions. Now I've tried to take all the pictures in this video exactly the same angle, but I can assure you that the shape is almost identical between these three models. Now I have run a tape measure on these models. I've measured the length, the front width, the rear width and the height, and they're all within 2 millimeters of length and 1 millimeter of width and 1 millimeter in height as well. So they are all true 1/18 scale replicas, and they are all incredibly similar to each other. The only flaw that I can really see that stands out is the rear wheel arch shape on the yellow BBR model. It's slightly squared off, whereas it should be completely round like the front wheel arch and like the other two F40 models that are underneath it. Now let's have a closer look at the front end details of these models. So again, running the tape measure on the model, the front width of the model, the height and the shape of the turret and the rear wing is all virtually identical between these three models. The side mirrors are almost identical on these models as well, as are the twin NACA ducts that you see on the top section of the bonnet. Now these are basically all the same. Now the differences with these models are slight differences in the light boxes in the front and also the air scoops. But let's talk about the light boxes first. So the shape is a little bit softer on the AB models, whereas the BBR and Kyosho, the shape is about the same, but I'd say compared to the real car, probably the AB models has the more accurate lights. The other difference is the front air scoop and the side air ducts for the brakes are all slightly different on all three models. Some are a little bit sharper than others, but I'd have to give it to the AB models. Now let's talk about the make it or break it part of a model, the wheels and tyres. Now let's break it down to just tyres first. So let's have a look at the yellow F40 model at the top by BBR. Profile of the tyre is okay. You can just see the shoulder blocks of the tread on the top of the tyre, but there is no tyre writing on this tyre at all. Now if we have a look at the Kyosho, it is a really defined shoulder tread blocking, which almost looks a bit too chunky. It almost looks like a 4x4 tyre, but the AB models is the most accurate, has a good tread pattern, but it also has the tyre lines and tyre text on the sidewall of the tyre. Now looking at the wheels, both the BBR and the AB models has the chrome outer lip, which it should, with the silver centre, black lock nut with a split pin in there. You can see the Kyosho high-end resin model actually has the poorest wheel out of the three, and the shape of the BBR star wheel is not quite right, so I would have to say that the wheel on the AB models is the most accurate to the real car, and that also has the best brake package as well. Now let's have a look at the rear of the model, because again, if you buy an F40 model, you want to see through that rear mesh and you want to see the engine detail. Now all these three models are high-end resin models, so they all have mesh in the rear. The Kyosho has a much heavier, thicker mesh, which doesn't look as realistic as the other two, but I'd say the Kyosho probably has the best tail lights replicated out of the three. There's slight differences in the rear valance and the thickness and shape of the rear wings. but I'd have to say that having the number plate on the BBR and the Kyosho blocks a lot of the view of what you want to see in between. So even though the AB models has all the little silver rivets around the mesh, which should be black, without a number plate on there, you can really see the rear muffler and engine detail through there. So again, I'd have to give it to the AB models. Now let's have a look at the engine details, because this is quite an eye-opener for me since I sat the three together. Now they're all pretty good. The detail on the castings of the inlet plenum, the hoses, the intercoolers, some of the other little obscure details in underneath the engine glass are all very similar, but there is a bit more refinement than others. Now I'd have to say the least detailed is the yellow BBR F40 model at the top. No texture on the heat shields, and there's just not as much detail in their painting or parts. Now if we have a look at the Kyosho and the AB models both at the bottom, there's a clear winner here. The Kyosho wins hands down. More three-dimensional finish to the intercoolers. It has additional hoses, little hose clamps painted on there, and the heat shields are equal, if not better, than the AB models. So I'd have to say best engine belongs in the Kyosho high-end resin. Now let's have a look at the interior as much as we can anyway, as these are sealed resin models. Let's just talk about the windows. So super clear plastics are used on these models. All three have a black window banner. The Kyosho has a little bit more of a fade out to that banner, but the Kyosho also does have window stickers on the front windows, side windows and headlights. If we have a look at the shape of the seats, very similar between the Kyosho and the AB models. The shape of the F40 seats a little bit off. Now we can have a look through here at the gear shifters, a little bit of carbon floor detail and a bit of the seats you can see. The BBR models is pretty good. It's got some carbon fibre on the floor. The gated shifter is right, and we do have the little gear shift numbers on the gear knob, same as all three numbers. But have a look at the Kyosho. Look at that bent gear shifter. Now that is not accurate at all, even though the interior details are good. But I'd have to say that the AB models out of the three has the most accurate interior. It does have a very realistic carbon Kevlar decal pattern throughout the whole interior pan. It does have a really nice flocking finish on the dashboard and the center console. It does have some little metal rivets in there which hold the gated shifter plate in place. And just overall, the fit and finish of the AB model's interior is the best out of the three. Now let's make a conclusion of these three models. So as I said, they are all high-end resin models. I don't think you'd be unhappy with any of the three, but for those of you that really want the most accurate replica, there are details which stand out between the three. Now I'd have to say coming in at third place would be the BBR Model's F40 in yellow that you can see. Overall a pretty good model, but it is lacking in crispness of details in some areas and some of the finer details. Now between the Kyosho high-end resin and the AB models in the foreground, I have to say that the Kyosho definitely has the best engine detail out of the three models. But overall accuracy, fit and finish, quality of the model, the winner would be definitely the AB models. It has the best interior out of them all. I think it has the best paintwork out of them all. The wheel detail and brake detail is the best out of them all. I'd say it only really loses to the Kyosho in the engine department, but overall, let me know what you think in the comments section below. I hope you enjoyed this comparison video, and thanks for watching Rob's Model Cars.